What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So a quick reminder, on March 31st, in about 2 weeks, the Mario 3D All-Stars Collection will no longer be available on the eShop, and no more new copies will be going out to retailers. So I told you I'd remind you, if you've been putting it off, might be a good time to think about going out and picking up one of those copies if you wanted to get it. Today, though, we have a bunch of things to go over, which does include more evidence seemingly mounting for this Switch Pro, or this Switch revision that is being rumored now for 2021. We're going to talk about that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about a sales report for the NPD showing the PlayStation 5 off to a very fast start, and the Switch even now being compared to the DS. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton, and if you're new here to the Small Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with Xbox Game Pass, because they put out a tweet that what they like to do is kind of hint and tease an announcement, a new game heading to Game Pass, and they did that here with this tweet where they said there's probably a hint about a game in here somewhere. Honestly, we can't even keep up with all the announcements lately. Now, going through this this mock-up email here that, like I said, is designed to give some hints towards other games, people started to realize pretty quickly that this seems to match the premise and the description of Outriders. Outriders is not out until April 1st, so we have a couple of weeks still until that's out. But on the Spawncast Saturday night, Jeff Grubb even mentioned that, yeah, Outriders does appear set to debut on Game Pass April 1st. And that is a great idea if all of that is correct, for Square to do that, because they could get money from Microsoft. It doesn't just happen for free. They would be paying them, and who knows, maybe that would also get more people to try out the game that would not have otherwise, because they would have gone and had to buy it for $60, and people are still kind of on the fence even after that demo. If it's just on Game Pass, you might say, oh, I'll just go ahead and download it and try it out. And the developers are basically saying, hey, we'll see how things go with the launch if we can continue with more content and updates. And, well, Game Pass, I think, is a good way to get more people in. So here's hoping that ends up being right. Also, while we're on the topic of Jeff Grubb, let's head over here to a Summer Games mess, because there is something interesting on there for Age of Empires fans. That's right, I didn't forget about you guys. Let's take a look here. April 10th, we do have AoE, which will be an update apparently for Age of Empires. And the big one that I'm sure people are wondering is, what's going on with Age of Empires 4? It was announced years ago? I think it was like 2017. It's been a while since we've seen much about this game. They have a website set up where I believe you can sign up and be like an insider and get some updates, but people are wondering, when is this game going to come out? Is it on PC? Are they getting it on Xbox as well, or are they just keeping it on PC? So they would have to figure out, of course, how to make it work for the controller, or who knows, maybe they just allow you to hook up a keyboard and mouse to your Xbox and you can play it that way. But yeah, look out for that next month. Hopefully we find out a bit more about the newest Age of Empires entry. Oh, and last year we did have Dying Light 2. It was delayed indefinitely, and that was a shame, because the game, from what they were showing, like initially with that quick gameplay bit they did, looked great. Like, I was really excited for what they were showing there, but I guess things just weren't going too well in development, or they needed more time, and now it looks like they've woken up, and you can see this tweet here saying, we've got a few words to share with you about the Dying Light 2 development process. Be sure to be with us next Wednesday. Want to see it first? Join our Discord server now and all of this. So there we are, March 17th. They're going to talk a bit about this game with an update, and people were seriously concerned that after some rumors and things showed up online about the development being like in shambles, at least they're able to come out and talk a bit more about their plans for this. And further down in that thread on Twitter, they did mention that they just announced it too early. Like, they should not have gone as far as they did that early with the game, and then they were going to be forced to delay it anyway. So yes, this seems at least like they understand that they probably should hold off on any big pieces of news or information about the game until they are sure that they have that at least release year or window set up. But look out for that later on this week. Certainly excited to see more of Dying Light 2. And guys, some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with this Switch Pro and the evidence that appears to be lining up here, especially with that Bloomberg article. If you missed that, there is an OLED display that apparently will be used in this Switch revision, as Bloomberg did report, Takashi Machizuki, that there were actual orders going to Nintendo from Samsung for rigid OLED screens. And now it looks like Samsung may have even tipped their hand a month or two ago. This spotted by Doc Trey over on YouTube. YouTube, and we can see here, moving forward, we intend to aggressively position Samsung OLED technology across promising market sectors that take us well beyond smartphones, including the laptop and notebook, automotive, and gaming console segments. Now, this was from a company PR that was sent out by Samsung just a month or so ago. And what we know now, according to Bloomberg, does line up with this here. I mean, Samsung is saying, yes, game console segment. Now, I do want to point out, Samsung is also competing with LG on the OLED sector when it comes to actual TVs that you put in your home. And right now, everyone really looks at that CX. Like, that's like the gaming enthusiast TV that they buy for their nice new Series X or their PS5 because it does 4K 120 and HDR, all of these things, right, that you would want as a gamer with a low input latency. So the other thing, I just want to point this out, the possibility here is they are also talking about their new QD OLEDs that are coming up later on this year, even beginning of 2022, and how they may position that to go up against LG's own OLED line with the CX and whatever they have after that. But looking at this, I will lean more towards it lines up with what Bloomberg has been saying, because they do mention all kinds of things that would actually use the displays in the device itself, laptops, for example, automotive, where you'd have the display, of course, for the heads up and all that. So I am looking at this like, okay, Samsung is essentially saying, yeah, we struck a deal with Nintendo and we're going to be shipping quite a few OLEDs to them for their next system coming up or their next revision. But something else popped up online this last week, and a lot of you sent me this because people are looking at this as this is the aha moment. Yes, Nintendo is definitely doing some sort of revision that would be meaningful in a way beyond an OLED display. We can head over here, this from Game Reactor, where they say news and rumors about the next Nintendo Switch iteration have been developing quickly following Bloomberg's report on a deal between Nintendo and Samsung on rigid OLED panels. While checking the veracity of the rumors, a person with knowledge in the matter told Game Reactor that NVIDIA is halting the production of the system on a chip powering the Nintendo Switch this year. Okay, so the Tegra X1, it's an older chip. It's from 2015. It's not weird to think that NVIDIA would say, I mean, we've developed this thing, we've created this for 6 years now. We're ready to move on to our newer fabrication and our newer architecture, all these things. We don't really need it, but it is tied to the Switch, and the Switch is printing money for everyone involved right now. So it is interesting to consider that possibly if they are actually moving on from the X1, it's because moving on to a newer chip wouldn't cost them any more money based on the way, I'm sure, in the factory things are set up and the newer fabrications. At times, you can actually move up depending on how far and Nintendo wants to move up with NVIDIA when it comes to generations of chips and all of this and what they have set up for a Tegra line in a smaller form factor like this, and it would be the same cost-wise. However, all I can seem to find, though, is that Game Reactor is the one able to come up with this source, and no one else has been able to vet that same claim right now. I did notice that someone on Reset Era had mentioned this same thing before, I believe, this article came out, so I am still on the fence with this one, because if they did stop the production of the X1, they would either have to stockpile chips if they are planning to still use this in something like the Switch Lite, or replace that chip as well, or who knows, maybe the current Switch is one that would be phased out, and then this revision or something could kind of slot its way in there, similar to what we saw with the 3DS to the 3DS XL, and then the new 3DS replacing the 3DS XL, and then eventually the 2DS XL replacing the 3DS XL. Actually, Nintendo does this quite a bit. Next up, let's talk about the NPD sales results for the month of February. We can head over here to Matt Piscatella, who had the report on Twitter, saying February 2021 US NPD thread, February 2021 consumer spending across video game hardware, content, and accessories reached a February record $4.6 billion, 35% higher when compared to a year ago. Nintendo Switch was the best-selling hardware platform in both units and dollars in February. Unit and dollar sales of Nintendo Switch hardware in February were the highest for any platform in a February month since the Nintendo Wii in February 2009. Total lifetime dollar sales of Switch hardware now exceed the Nintendo DS, making Switch Nintendo's second best-selling platform in US tracked history. Nintendo Wii ranks first. Switch is currently the 7th best-selling hardware platform in lifetime US dollar sales. So it's important to note that the NPD will track dollar sales for something like this, and the DS Lite, for example, launched at what, $130, I believe, compared to the Switch's $300 or even the Wii's $250. It's not a surprise that the Switch would run past the DS fairly quickly if you consider how many units the DS sold. But still, it is now passing the DS in terms of dollar sales in the NPDs for the US, and the Wii is next, and yes, it should be passing that pretty quickly as well. Also, the PS5, take a look at this right here, because this might surprise some people with what's going on currently in the scalping market online. PlayStation 5 ranked as the second best-selling hardware platform in February in both unit and dollar sales. PlayStation 5 is currently the fastest-selling hardware platform in US history, total dollar sales after 4 months in the market. And I mean, it's $500 for a PS5, the digital version's $400, so that means that the PS5 that I'm sure a lot of people are able to find and buy, because the digital version is actually pretty difficult to find at a lot of retailers in general. I know it's hard to find, but like the digital version was even harder than the base PS5. It's $100 more than the PS4, so it makes sense why it would also be able to run past that in terms of dollar sales in the first 4 months, or even the Switch. If you think about it, I mean, it's $500 versus $300, but still, it is interesting to think of what the PS5 is able to do here despite the limitations around stock and availability, and scalpers pretty much cleaning up the market right now with the PlayStation 5, able to set records over the first 4 months when it comes to dollar sales tracked through the NPD. And the Switch, like I said, is still continuing to set its own records and passing the DS. Both the Switch and the PlayStation 5 are rolling along right now, with the PS5 only being in the market for 4 months, but the Switch now into its 5th year and still doing this. That is extremely impressive on Nintendo's side, and I don't think it's going to stop anytime soon, especially if they do something like have a Switch revision or a Switch Pro, something they failed to do with the Wii. Who knows? The Switch, maybe it does run up to the DS's 155 million units sold in its lifetime. We'll see. Next up, let's talk about FPS Boost. This is a feature that Microsoft has introduced this generation. I think it's one of the coolest things they've been able to do with their backwards compatibility initiative, where they're going back, getting all the older generations of Xbox games and bringing them up for newer hardware, and even putting them on Game Pass, where you just go on there and download them like Morrowind. That's so cool to see that. But FPS Boost will take games that are running at 30, for example, and move them up to 60 frames per second, taking advantage of the newer hardware in the Series S and the Series X. And it looks like a few other games are going to be heading there as well. This was in a live stream with Major Nelson talking about how Fallout 4, Fallout 76, Skyrim, Dishonored, and Prey will all be taking advantage of FPS Boost, going from 30 to 60 frames per second. This is great news, especially for something like Skyrim, where people are trying to modify the game and locking themselves, I think, out of achievements to do that. This is going to be part of FPS Boost. Prey getting this is awesome. By the way, I love seeing how many people are excited to try out Prey now that it's on Game Pass. It's awesome to see. And then we have Fallout 76 and but like then we have Dishonored, yeah, right, and Fallout 4 being much more smooth at 60 frames per second there. So I hope they continue this as they go along, because they did an initial batch of games with like Watch Dogs 2, and people were pretty happy about that. So yes, I like that they are looking at frame rate as opposed to saying, how can we make this game 8K? No, how can we make this game 60 frames per second or 120 frames per second? I like that mindset a bit more. In our last bit of news, let's talk about the Marvel's Avengers game again. We have that Square event coming up here soon, and that was one of the games that they had mentioned there, and we expect to see some updates because it is a live service, games as a service style game, and it does look like they won't be abandoning it like anytime soon. Apparently, this was during a developer live stream where they were talking about the new Hawkeye character that'll be coming to the game. They say, "We understand, but rest assured we're committed to the future of Marvel's Avengers for years to come and have been working on a whole lot of things which we're excited to reveal. Looking forward to seeing you there in next gen." So it's still a strange situation with this game, because you feel like they would capitalize on some of the other things that Marvel is currently doing. Like, I have no idea how they couldn't think to themselves to take advantage of what was going on with WandaVision, whether it's different costumes in the game or maybe even having a whole event around this series that really took over the internet. I mean, people on Twitter were talking about it constantly. Is it Friday yet? Because WandaVision is going to be on. I want to see what the new episode's what's going to happen in this. And they just completely ignored it. From what I can tell, that seems like a slam dunk. Very easy to come up with something like that and implement it, but I guess not for this game. And going forward, I assume they will have new events and they'll have new characters, but even getting Hawkeye out is like a whole thing, and Spider-Man's just gonna be on the PlayStation 5, so they already kind of split the base there. We'll see what they have at this presentation, but at least according to them right now, they won't be abandoning it anytime soon. However, I understand that is a concern for a lot of gamers when it comes to live service games, especially with what we've seen with things like Anthem. And before we go to the comment of the day, let's take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday where I asked, is the Bethesda acquisition by Microsoft enough to get you into Game Pass going forward? I put 4 different responses here because some of you have asked for more than just yes or no. I said yes, and I said no, and then I'm already subscribed to Game Pass and I'm just planning to buy the games as they release instead, which I assume Microsoft will do for a while. They'll still at least release the game at retail. They can go and pick up the physical copy. But it says 34% of you guys said, no, I'm not the biggest Bethesda fan. 29% of you are already subscribed to Game Pass, and 16% of you said yes, if Starfield and Elder Scrolls are exclusive, I'm in. You know what's interesting is I saw a lot of people online all of a sudden say that they don't like Bethesda games, like Bethesda games aren't good, and I understand about Fallout 76 because it wasn't very good, but like there are some very good games that have come out from Bethesda. People absolutely love the Elder Scrolls series, and I'm sure there are quite a few big reactions on live streams when Elder Scrolls 6 was unveiled, even though it was basically like the Metroid Prime 4 unveiling with like just a title card, or even Starfield. But it's very strange that all of a sudden people turned on it and said, no, those Bethesda games aren't very good. It's like, are you sure? And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from Prismatron 5000. Todd Howard did it. He sold Skyrim again. Not only that, but Skyrim will be with us forever now. It's part of Game Pass, so anywhere you have your phone, you have Skyrim. And it goes a little further than that. Todd Howard's now gonna get Skyrim on maybe your TV. If that happens, who knows how deep this will really go. Will we eventually have Game Pass on our smartwatches just always attached to our wrist at all times? It could eventually be part of us if we start having chips implanted in our head and Game Pass is there too. Todd Howard's really thinking about the next 50 years here with Skyrim. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button, it really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Where's the NPD results with the PS5 breaking records in the first 4 months, and even the Switch now coming up in the conversation of the DS maybe as it passes the Wii. That's gonna be an interesting thing to see there. And then also, what about the Switch Pro or Switch Revision? A lot of dots starting to connect there with the OLED display being mentioned by Samsung with game consoles. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.